Hey there, Twisters, and welcome, hockey fans. For this video, I'm going to help you pick out which NHL team to cheer for in the 2023-24 season. Some of you are probably new to the NHL and haven't quite found your favorite team. And some of you out there, kind of like myself, you might want a second or a third favorite team to support, especially if your favorite team isn't supposed to make the playoffs this year. So this video could help either audience, and we're going to be putting out all sorts of content throughout the NHL season. Of course, shout out in the comments down below not only who you look forward to watching this upcoming year, but do let me know if you have any ideas for other topics I should cover for this season. This is completely randomized. The first team I ended up here with was the Rangers, the New York Rangers. So first comment here from our community comes from ZT the Coffee. I'll just leave this on screen. Basically, this team has a flair for the dramatic, whether that's for better or for worse. Now, I personally would say with the Rangers, you're going to get a reliable mix of stars, star talent, veterans who've proven themselves year after year after year. Chris Kreider, Mika Zibanejad, Artemi Panarin, and you still have young players who are only going to get better and better. Norris Trophy perennial finalist Adam Fox, Keandre Miller had a fantastic season last year. Ryan Lindgren also. So a lot of good young defensemen. And then you have a fantastic, if not top of class goaltender in Igor Shesterkin in the prime of his career. So they have good balance overall to this team. And again, players who are only going to continue getting better. They're about 7th or 8th best odds to win the Stanley Cup this year. And their last Stanley Cup victory was in 1994. So going on about 30 years. All right, Washington Capitals, also in the same division as the Rangers. I'd say with them, if you are a fan of following a playoff race just to get in, right, like a wild card chase, this team's going to be scratching and clawing for an opportunity to make the playoffs. They have been regressing a little bit. It's been a few years since they even won a playoff game, but it will be exciting even if they don't make the postseason because Alex Ovechkin is just 72 goals away from breaking Wayne Gretzky's record for the most in NHL history. He passed Gordie Howe this past season. That's a huge deal. So he's not going to break the record this upcoming season. Maybe he does, but it will be really exciting to follow him nonetheless. Sorry, not enough caffeine this morning, I guess. All right, next team, Anaheim Ducks. Salty Ducks fan. Not sure. Still trying to figure it out. Yeah, it has been a tough few years for the Ducks, but I think they're going to take a step forward this season. Maybe the next year's when they really start breaking through. They do have some top prospects who aren't necessarily expected to get NHL time this upcoming season. Talking about Leo Carlsson, Pavel Mintyukov, Olin Zellweger, among others. But they do have a nice little 1-2 tandem of Trevor Zegras, one of the more creative players in hockey, and Mason McTavish. I think he'll be the future captain of this team. You might be more surprised versus what you expect this upcoming year with Anaheim, and it's only going to get better from there. All right, Winnipeg Jets. This could be a tough season, but this team, you can't quite count them out just yet. I know they lost Pierre-Luc Dubois, but they did get Gabe Vilardi, who had a pretty successful year with the Kings last year, and Alex Iafallo and Rasmus Kupari. They'll have a full season of Cole Perfetti, let's hope. So in a division, the Central Division, which won't necessarily be a world beater, I don't expect. They have two very good teams at the top, and then after that it drops off a little bit, and I think the Jets could still find a way to make the postseason, especially if they want to hold on to Connor Hellebuyck, who is a world-class goaltender, a Vezina Trophy finalist for the best goaltender in the NHL just about every year. But if the Jets really are to kind of retool their team, they might end up trading Hellebuyck, or they might trade Mark Scheifele, who had 42 goals for them last year. So this is kind of a bit of a risk if you want to be a Jets fan, but of course, a smaller fan base in a smaller arena, so being part of a more intimate group of fans in that sense. All right, they've never been to a Stanley Cup, by the way. Ottawa Senators, we're going to talk about a couple other teams like them in the Atlantic Division. This is going to be a crazy division. I think maybe only one team you can count out for a playoff spot. So there are going to be 7 teams battling for 4 or 5 spots. It'll be pretty crazy. Now, they did lose Alex DeBrincat in the offseason, a guy who has scored 40 goals before on 2 separate occasions. But they loaded up with Vlad Tarasenko. They got Dominic Kubalik. So they got some reinforcements for scoring. And they get Josh Norris back. So they were able to stay competitive last season without one of their best players. Then they add in Jonas Korpisalo as their goaltender. If he plays any bit like he did this last season, this team could be one of those who hasn't made the playoffs in quite some time. It'd be really exciting because I remember growing up watching the Senators as one of the powerhouses in the Eastern Conference. So do not count them out one bit. Next team, I got the Minnesota Wild. They're in the Central Division. I still think that they should make the playoffs. They, 2 years ago, were a very offensive-minded club. They were really fun to watch. Last season, though, they kind of shifted toward one that was geared more toward defense and reliability in their own zone and very good goaltending. There'd be really two reasons to cheer for them this upcoming year. First of all, Kirill Kaprizov, offensively, one of the most gifted players in the Western Conference, 40 goals in just 67 games. The other reason is Marc-Andre Fleury. Now, he's not starting 60 games a year, so you won't watch him as much as you might have been accustomed to in the past. But it might be his last season, and he's been one of the most beloved figures in hockey for 2 decades. A former number 1 overall pick. He's won 3 Stanley Cups, and just personality-wise, he's one of the absolute gems out there in the NHL. No Stanley Cup final appearance for the Wild, ever. So there's another reason. Arizona Coyotes, also in the Central Division, again, have low expectations, but you could be pleasantly surprised. They haven't properly qualified for the playoffs, I would say, since 2012. 2020, I won't count that. That was just a weird year. They have a lot of young firepower on this team that might be kind of flying in under the radar. Now, Clayton Keller, of course, we know he had 37 goals this past season. Matias Maccelli was part of the Calder Trophy race for Rookie of the Year. Dylan Guenther, you'll get a full season of him, maybe some more ice time. Logan Cooley, a former 3rd overall pick, I believe, just in 2022. Barrett Hayton kind of broke out this past season. You have some puck movers on defense, like getting Sean Durzi in the offseason. They're not expected to qualify for the playoffs. I wouldn't pick them to make it just this year, but they could be quite a spoiler out there in wrecking some other teams' chances. And again, a smaller fan base, I think it'd be fun to watch more of them this upcoming season and get to know some more of their fans as they become more relevant. All right, LA Kings in the Pacific Division. This is a team that has just over a couple of years become very offensively creative, very versatile with how they can attack. They have Pierre-Luc Dubois on the team now. So they have 3 great attacking lines, and this was the 4th best power play this past season. And now that they add Dubois, it could even be more lethal potentially. You have the sniping of Adrian Kempe, the creativity of Kevin Fiala, the physicality we'll see from Quentin Byfield. I'm excited to watch him. I think he's going to break through this upcoming season. A former 2nd overall pick a few years ago. And yeah, they have the 11th to 13th best odds at winning a Stanley Cup this season. They're kind of a sexy pick, though. I've heard a lot of people talk them up quite a bit. Could they contend for the top of the Pacific Division? Maybe so. Now let's get to the Chicago Blackhawks. So we got a comment here from Daniel Ruth. I root for the Blackhawks because we are now officially in a new era, represented by this new kid who seemed to be pretty good and managed to get drafted 1st overall. So we're talking about Connor Bedard, the most hyped NHL prospect since Connor McDavid, most likely, back in 2015. So he could be the standout player going forward in the NHL. It doesn't necessarily happen in the first season, but he's giving us a lot to look forward to. This past season in the WHL, as a 17-year-old, in 57 games, 71 goals, and 72 assists for 143 points. That's just bonkers. And it's not just Bedard with the Blackhawks. They have a couple other young, promising talents out there like Kevin Korchinski on defense and Lucas Reichel, a full season of him. So that Blackhawks core might start forming this upcoming season. Of course, we were accustomed to many great competitive years with that dynasty club of the 2010s. It's been a while since the Hawks were really relevant in the NHL, but that can start building this upcoming season. Our next team here is the New York Islanders, and this comment here from Ross B. Cheer for the Islanders because we will fight for every point we can, and we have our first full year of Bo Horvat, and Pierre Engvall. This is a team that does have to get it done by committee. It's not going to be one player who's driving the play all the time. They don't have that many superstars so much. So if you like a more blue-collar, physical team, a team that has to scratch and claw its way to probably secure a playoff spot once again, this would be the team for you. They're very loyal to their players as well. For better and for worse, they're going to have players who stick around for another 5 or 6 years, up and down the roster. But on top of that, I think the real selling point for the Islanders is that you have maybe the best goaltending tandem in the NHL with Ilya Sorokin and also Semyon Varlamov, even in his mid-30s. He's still playing fantastic hockey. So if you like great saves out there, this would be a wonderful team for you to select. And they were last in the Stanley Cup in 1984. Their last win was in 1983. So going on 40 years here. Now we go to the Seattle Kraken. A comment here from Izzy. Cheer for the Kraken because they play a well-rounded team game. Everybody can score, and it's a relatively unique and really engaging, fun experience to watch. And we have a lot of young guys in our system as well. Yes, they do. They're just in their 3rd year in the NHL. And this past year, the Kraken really transformed into one of the most exciting teams in the NHL. Everybody was scoring from line 1 to line 4, and Vince Dunn was adding a lot of points from the defense. I think that in addition, the real selling point here is, can they actually win a Stanley Cup faster than the Vegas Golden Knights did? So the Knights did it in 6 years. Could the Kraken do it in fewer than that? With this team, I'm not entirely sold on them, to be frank, but they do have a couple players who are still entering the primes of their career or very much in them. So they will be competitive in the Pacific Division. They will take a shot at making a playoff spot again. And they are hosting the Winter Classic this year. That's another great selling point. So the New Year's Day outdoor game at Lumen Field, the home of the Seattle Seahawks. All right, now next team is the New Jersey Devils. Just like Seattle this past year, incredible improvement. We knew that they had young talent, but they hadn't quite put it all together. And boy, last season, they were an absolute treat to watch as well as Seattle. So this team has all sorts of firepower, all sorts of weapons. It starts with Jack Hughes, Jesper Bratt, Nico Hischier, Dawson Mercer could be a 35-goal scorer. They get Timo Meier this past season to add some more size up front. Such a great team to watch. Defensively, they're solid as well. They have still very good depth overall, even though they lost a couple players in the offseason. Luke Hughes is going to be a big offensive producer for them on defense, in addition to Dougie Hamilton. You've got Lindy Ruff. I think that he's a very compelling reason to cheer for this team. He's been coaching in the NHL for over 25 years. He got so close to a Stanley Cup in 1999 with Buffalo. So you got to root for this guy. He almost was, the fans were calling for his firing just a couple games into last season, and then they just absolutely started tearing it up. So I have really gotten to enjoy the company of other Devils fans out here. And they're seeking their first Stanley Cup in 20 years. They last won it in 2003. Now we get to the Buffalo Sabres. So Ruff's old team here. We have a comment from Sabres guy. Finally get to see playoff hockey. And Tage Thompson, Jeff Skinner, Alex Tuch, and Rasmus Dahlin. That was the surprising one. Hit 100 points each and then knock out Toronto in the first round. Come watch fun, exciting hockey with us. Somebody liked to talk a little smack in the comments too. But I can't say that you're wrong in the sense that the Sabres are expected to make the playoffs or at least challenge over the course of 82 games. It's been 12 years since they were even in the playoffs last. That's crazy. There are players that weren't even mentioned here, like Jack Quinn once he comes back from injury. Casey Middlestat took a big step forward. Dylan Cousins, big time improvement over the past season. JJ Peterka, a lot of Sabres fans expect him to break out this next season. You've got the great defensive pairing of Rasmus Dahlin and Owen Power. These guys could be eventually nominated as a finalist for the best defenseman in the NHL. And additionally, just like a month ago, not even, they sadly lost their longtime broadcaster of over 50 years, Rick Jenneret. Just unique, one of a kind. There was no voice out there like his. So I think there will be all sorts of tributes to him. And yeah, Buffalo, man, this is a very intimate community of fans for both hockey and football, about the Buffalo Bills. All right, now we get to the St. Louis Blues. My compelling reason here is if you're somebody who is not afraid to have faith in a team that others may have lost faith in, this would be a good team for you. Just 2 seasons ago, they were battling the Colorado Avalanche in the second round, hanging tough with them. They had 9 players on that roster with over 20 goals. Now they've lost some of that personnel. They really did fall flat this past season. There are some question marks, especially defensively, but this is a team that still could put it together if they get a little something extra out of a few particular players like Jordan Kyrou, Robert Thomas, maybe Jake Neighbors. Pavel Buchnevich had a great season for them. Really excited at the prospect of Joel Hofer being called up from the AHL to maybe be that Jordan Binnington from a few years ago, to help this team by putting them on his back and getting them into playoff contention. Binnington's still on the team as well, but hasn't exactly been quite as sharp as he was several seasons ago. There's a good chance that they'll at least be fighting for a postseason spot, so it's always fun to be part of that kind of wildcard race. Our next team here is the Colorado Avalanche. Of course, they won the Cup just 2 seasons ago. They'll want to avenge last year's first-round defeat to the Kraken, and I think that they have a really good chance at making a deep playoff run, even without Gabriel Landeskog for another season. I wouldn't be surprised if they won the Western Conference and maybe even won the Stanley Cup again. They have a killer top line with Nathan MacKinnon. He could certainly make a run at the MVP. Mikko Rantanen scored over 50 goals this past season. You have an incredible defense, the most exciting defense in the NHL, I would say. You have Cale Makar, arguably the best defenseman in the NHL. He is an offensive wizard. His skating is tremendous. And you have lots of other great defensemen besides him, such as Devon Taves, who would easily be a standout D-man on any other NHL team. Bowen Byram, I expect a lot from him this upcoming season. Josh Manson, Sam Girard. They have lots of great weapons from the blue line, and the goaltending is quite good as well. They had a fantastic season as a tandem, and there's no reason why they couldn't be that again this upcoming year. All right, now we get to the Calgary Flames. This is a tough one. I've got a comment here from Jonathan. They disappointed me badly last year. It's simply not possible to do even worse with the current players. I'm excited to see how they do under their new coach, Ryan Huska, plus hope that GM Craig Conroy will successfully deal with all his soon-to-be free agents. Yeah, this could be a very different looking team at the end of this season than it starts with. They have some players who are pending free agents in the offseason. So will they sign deals, right? So it's tough to imagine that the Flames, especially if they do make those trades, are a playoff team. It's going to be challenging for them. They had some players who fell off this past season, especially Jonathan Huberdeau. Remember just 2 years ago with the Panthers, 30 goals and 85 assists, I believe. I think that he could bounce back. Maybe not to that level, but when he's going, he is one of the more exciting players out there. Now we get to the Carolina Hurricanes. This is my favorite team in the Eastern Conference. They're going to play as hungry as any NHL team in this upcoming season. They've been so close to getting to the Stanley Cup final. I know they got swept last year. Again, watch the games. If you didn't see the scoreboard, you would have thought that the Hurricanes won 2 of those 4 games. They have a fiery coach, the kind of guy that players would run through a brick wall for, in Rod Brind'Amour. And if you're a fan of kind of story arcs, I think that this is one of the teams you absolutely have to watch this upcoming season. So from 2009 to 2018, they didn't make the playoffs at all. They were miserable for the most part. They hire Rod Brind'Amour, go to the playoffs every year since then. They have the best defense in the Eastern Conference, and really, this is a by-committee team. They're not going to rely on one player in particular to get it all done. And if you're looking for somebody who hasn't won a Stanley Cup yet, who is playing one of his last seasons in the NHL, it would be Brent Burns. Quite a character he is. All right, Columbus Blue Jackets. This is our next team. If you have modest expectations, again, kind of like I said with the Coyotes, you might be pleasantly surprised. And some of you out there predict that Columbus could challenge for a playoff spot. I'm not quite there personally. I need to see their goaltending take a step forward, but they did get a couple of veteran defensemen to kind of make that a little bit easier for them in getting Severson and Provorov. But really with the Blue Jackets, it's about all these young weapons that they have offensively. They have what's graded as the best prospect pool in the NHL right now. And you'll see some young players like Adam Fantilli, who they just drafted 3rd overall. Kirill Marchenko really burst onto the scene this past year. Kent Johnson had a step forward this past year. You have, of course, the veterans like Johnny Gaudreau and Patrick Laine. I know there are other forwards I'm missing out on here. I wanted to also highlight Alex Texier is back. He had to take a full year off for mental health reasons. So I really do applaud him, getting back to his confident self and getting back to doing what he loves in the NHL. So big shout out to him. And also with the Blue Jackets, if they found a way to make it to the playoffs, how could you not want to root for them? Because they've never been past the second round. All right, now we get to the defending Cup champion, the Vegas Golden Knights. Big shout outs to 2 of our MVP members here on Twisted Wrister Hockey. We've got, for the love of life, Dustin, and also Dean here, who adds this lengthy comment. I'll leave it up on the screen. I'm going to focus on the second paragraph. They also have a management team that is committed to a winning culture and will make moves, albeit unpopular at times, but it ensures a quality product is put on the ice. They don't appear afraid to spend the money when available to acquire the players they need to win. So far, it has worked for them. Yeah, there's really no better way to say it. He's absolutely right. They're not afraid to be aggressive. Of course, it's a very attractive place for professional athletes, right? For many, many reasons. Their locker room has been completely galvanized by Mark Stone as the captain, and Jack Eichel has really turned his career around. I can't wait to see what he can do in a full season because he was magnificent in the playoffs. I don't think we can count out the Golden Knights from getting back to the Stanley Cup final and maybe even winning it. They were so dominant. They're also going to play the Kraken in the Winter Classic on New Year's Day. All right, now we go to the Montreal Canadiens. So comment here from Bramaster. I cheer for Montreal to get a high draft pick. There hasn't been a superstar talent on the team in decades. They have lots of young firepower, not expected to make the playoffs, but be competitive in that Atlantic Division. You have Uri Slafkovsky, a number 1 overall pick from 2022, a full season of Kirby Dach to look forward to, and this is added on to the talents that are developing even further, like Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield. Maybe he'll challenge for 40 goals in the upcoming season. So you have plenty of young forwards to look forward to. Even defensively, you have Caden Gooley for a full season, former 16th overall pick in 2020. Arbor Xhekaj, who can drop the gloves and has one of the more inspiring stories in the NHL. Now we get to the Nashville Predators. So this is a team kind of like Winnipeg and a little bit like the St. Louis Blues. They could still challenge for a playoff spot. I know that some people will expect them to drop off quite a bit, but remember, last year, they were battling for a playoff spot despite missing their top line. Now, they've traded out a couple of players. Gone is Ryan Johansson, and gone is Matt Duchene, as you know. But they bring in the veteran leadership of Ryan O'Reilly. I love the impact that he had on the Maple Leafs this past year. And the division, I don't think, is exactly getting any stronger. So with the likes of Philip Tomasino and Lucas Evangelista, and I know I'm forgetting one other guy on their team, they could actually challenge for a playoff spot, I still think, as long as they don't trade out Jussi Saros, one of the great goaltenders in that division, like Connor Hellebuck for Winnipeg. And they still have Roman Josi, one of the great two-way defensemen in the NHL. So there still is a winning product that they can put together on the ice. It's just a matter of, are they going to stick with that for 82 games, or do they want to sort of retool with their new GM, Barry Trotz, one of my favorite former coaches in the NHL? Now we get to the Edmonton Oilers. So we have this comment here. I don't even want to try to pronounce that. I cheer for the Oilers because they have great players like Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, and a mix of some older players like Matthias Ekholm and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and some younger players like Evan Bouchard and Stuart Skinner that look to have a great future ahead of them. Especially for Bouchard, really like watching him on the power play. So my compelling reason is the power play. The Oilers set a record this past season by converting 32.4% of their power plays. A really good team will be around 25%. So they were light years ahead of everybody else. There's nothing more exciting to watch in the NHL than an Oilers power play. They have quite arguably the two greatest players in the world, but these are two outstanding talents who are in the primes of their career in McDavid and Draisaitl. They put up 281 points combined this past year, and some people think that McDavid's gonna just keep going up from there, and I don't see a reason why not. You also have Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, who had 100 points. So there is some amazing top-end firepower on this team. It is pretty damn exciting to watch, and this is a team that should be contending for a Stanley Cup, and maybe has the best chance among Canadian teams at winning Canada's first cup in over 30 years. All right, another Canadian team we have here are the Vancouver Canucks. I'm rocking my skate jersey here. I think the Canucks need some love. Don't count them out just yet. With Rick Tocchet coming in as head coach mid-season last year, the team was 20-12-4. That's really good. You have a lot of players who could help them contend for a playoff spot. You have Thatcher Demko. He played great after coming back from injury. Andrei Kuzmenko, 39 goals, working alongside Elias Pettersson, who had a magnificent year, over 100 points for him. Could he actually top that this upcoming season? Maybe so. You have Quinn Hughes, the captain, an amazing year defensively and especially offensively. He's now the new captain on this team. He's only going to get better. I like the Carson Soucy addition as well. You know, the Pacific, you have, of course, the Golden Knights and the Oilers, and I think the Kings, not necessarily in that order. But after that, could this team be contending with Seattle for a playoff spot? Like I said, don't count them out. I think they need some more love and recognition. All right, now we get to the Detroit Red Wings, and Dan, longtime friend of the channel and one of our channel moderators, putting out this big comment. I'll leave that up on screen. If we're talking about this upcoming season, this is a team kind of like the Senators and also the Buffalo Sabres in the Atlantic Division. They could get to the playoffs for the first time in a long time. Their last playoff appearance, I believe, was in 2016. Growing up, for me, and for a lot of you out there, was the gold standard in the NHL. The top line could be absolutely dynamite for them. You have Alex DeBrincat, a two-time 40-goal scorer now on this team, Michigan native. Let's hope that he be playing alongside Dylan Larkin, who had a fantastic career-defining year. Lucas Raymond, could he rebound and look more like the Raymond from his rookie season? You have other strong young players on this team like Moritz Seider, who a lot of people out there believe is a top caliber defenseman in the NHL in the making. His rookie season just 2 years ago was magnificent. Simon Edvinsson should be part of that. They have some other young forwards. So the Red Wings, yeah, I want to see them get back to those glory days. And I don't know if it's going to necessarily be this year, but again, they should be competitive through the course of 82 games, taking a step forward and eventually getting back into the playoffs and doing so consistently. All right, the Boston Bruins are the next team. So comment here from Jasper Flair. Cheer for the Bruins. I know everyone seems to talk about the team, but with trying to find a new captain and with the team becoming 100 years old and becoming the first American hockey team, and with redemption to get the cup with new players and the thrill. Okay, I'm just going to end it right there. For the Bruins, this is a redemption story, and kind of like the last time they won the Stanley Cup. So remember in 2010, they are up 3-0 in the series against the Flyers in the second round, and then they get reverse swept. The next year, they win the Stanley Cup against a crazy good Vancouver Canucks team. So can they redeem themselves after losing in the first round to the Florida Panthers, the lowest seeded team, after a record-setting year for them in their 100th season as an NHL franchise? That gives you a lot right there. And I know that they lost Patrice Bergeron and David Krejci to retirement. They still have great weapons, especially defensively, but David Pastrnak is the straw that stirs the drink offensively, and still very strong goaltending on this team as well. So there's still reason to believe that the Bruins can be competitive. I don't know if they're going to win the division necessarily, but get in the playoffs, and we'll see what kind of damage they can do in a redemption story for them. All right, now we get to the Florida Panthers. That's the team that knocked them out. So we have this comment here. Cheer for the Panthers. The reason why you should root for them is because we have great players and staff, good ownership that wants to make the team good. They never give up, only when they hear the final horn. And we have a great atmosphere at the games, and the fans are always fired up. I love watching the Panthers because they're a team that will be down by 2 goals going into the third period and find a way to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. They also did that in the playoffs, especially in that first round against the Bruins. And they have some great talents on this team that serve kind of a variety of roles. Matthew Tkachuk, a Hart Trophy finalist this past season. Incredible postseason for him. Sasha Barkov, we have to always talk about him as one of the better two-way forwards in the NHL. Brandon Montour was one of the more exciting defensemen to watch in the NHL this past season. The sniping, the clutch scoring from Carter Verhaeghe. I really like Sam Reinhart. He's there for one more year as well. I am concerned about the goaltending. I'm not entirely sure which Bobrovsky will get in the regular season. What about Spencer Knight? But anyway, yeah, this is a team that has made a lot of big, gutsy efforts to win right now. Now we get to the Philadelphia Flyers. So, has anybody ever heard this phrase or said this themselves? This team makes me drink. That was the first thing that came to mind when I thought about the Flyers, and this next team will certainly be the case as well. Yeah, the Flyers might be for you. This is a fantastic fan base, a very loud, passionate fan base. They're right in the middle of a lengthy rebuild. I know that's not exactly a great selling point, but as I'll say about this next team, when you buy in, when they're crappy, when you can appreciate the, those moments of brilliance and the blunders as well, when you can appreciate that, especially with great fans, then you can really enjoy being a part of that sort of fan community. So you got that going for them. They will have some great talents. I gotta highlight a couple of them, right? But you do have Carter Hart still. We'll see if he gets traded, but a franchise goaltender for them. Noah Cates, Cam York, Morgan Frost, players who took a step forward this past season. You have Travis Konechny, 30 goals in just 61 games this past year. Again, we'll see if he gets traded. And lastly, they're actually sporting new uniforms this year. It is very similar to other Flyers looks in the past, but I believe it is an improvement over what they've worn over the past several seasons. The next team is my favorite team, my beloved San Jose Sharks. We'll turn it over to that guy. I mean, yeah, they suck right now, but here in a year or two, they should be a team to watch out for because they're starting to build what looks like to be a promising prospect pool. I can't quite get on board with them being good 2 years from now. I think that they, like the Flyers, are in a lengthy rebuild of maybe 4 years, but I'm still buying in because I'm willing to give this regime a chance. This is only the second year of Mike Grier as general manager. I love the Sharks, man. First of all, we all know teal, best color in sports. Boom. Now, I'm not expecting them to have a lot of their best young players in the NHL this upcoming season. William Eklund would be the standout example. He is a young power play wizard from what I've seen so far with the Sharks. So I'm looking forward to watching him. I am looking forward at the potential of netting the first overall pick in the NHL this year. But again, buy in, do it with a great group of fans. I know it's super quiet there at the Shark Tank these days, but that place is absolutely roaring when this team is competitive. Now we get to the Pittsburgh Penguins. We got this comment here from Penguins diehard Mike Thompson, an MVP member of the Twisted Wrister community. I root for the Penguins because they've been my team since I was 5 years old. This year would be amazing if Sidney Crosby could get his 4th Stanley Cup. Yeah, you have several first ballot Hall of Famers on this team now who are looking for one more deep run. They've won 3 Stanley Cups with Crosby, Malkin, and Chris Letang. Now they bring in Erik Karlsson, who won the Norris Trophy this past year, becoming the first defenseman in 31 years to put up over 100 points. And he did that on a terrible Sharks team. So that could make for a more exciting roster for the Penguins. Rickard Rakell, I don't think he's been talked about enough since he's arrived there. He's been an excellent producer. Jake Gensel, I can't forget him as well. And again, if you like this idea of these grizzled veterans getting over that hump one more time, and potentially retiring in their final season as a Stanley Cup champion. I know that these guys have a few more years left on their deals. And also you have Kyle Dubas as their general manager. He knows how to make big moves at the trade deadline, so Pittsburgh might not be done loading up their roster. Now we get to the Toronto Maple Leafs. So with them, you have several players who are fantastic scorers who are in the primes of their careers. Austin Matthews just signed a deal to stick around for 4 more years. You have William Nylander. We'll see what happens with his contract. You have Mitch Marner, who was a Selke Trophy finalist, I believe, this past season, and was also very exciting to watch offensively. Morgan Riley on defense, very clutch in the playoffs for them. So this is a team that is in win-now mode. And yet, even though the media will always be talking about the Maple Leafs, we all know that they're not going to make it to the Stanley Cup final. That's what we assume, because this is a team that hasn't made the final since 1967. They went 19 years without winning a playoff series, but this past year they did take that step forward. They did it against the Tampa Bay Lightning, and so that was a great moment for them, and hopefully they can add on to that with this core of players that they have. I like the addition of Tyler Bertuzzi to this group, even if it's just for 1 year. Mark Giordano, this could be his final season in the NHL. He's one of those players that, again, has played for almost 2 decades and doesn't have a Stanley Cup to his name. So there's another reason to get behind the Maple Leafs. All right, we have 2 more teams to discuss here. First is the Tampa Bay Lightning. Now, they won the Cup back in 2020 and 2021. And even though it wouldn't be officially recognized as a dynasty by the Hockey Hall of Fame, if they won this upcoming Stanley Cup, I mean, that to me is a dynasty. To be able to win 3 in a span of 5 seasons, I think that's pretty dynastic. The Blackhawks were a dynasty 2010, 13, and 16. I think that that's fair in the salary cap era. Anyway, semantics aside, this is a Hall of Fame group consisting of Victor Hedman on defense, Andrei Vasilevsky, the greatest postseason goaltender since Patrick Waugh, most likely, Nikita Kucherov, Steven Stamkos, Braden Point, and all of these players can still contribute at a very high level. And I say so in part because they actually had something resembling a full offseason this year. They weren't playing all the way into June. They were eliminated at the end of April. So more time to rest. They are more of a veteran group. And to close things out, we have the Dallas Stars. I think that they should be one of the contenders to get to the Stanley Cup final this upcoming season. Part of that is because of their lethal top line. Just like the Tampa Bay Lightning with Stamkos, Kucherov, and Point on that first line, the Stars boast an equally impressive group with Rope Hintz, led the playoffs in scoring, even though they didn't go to the Stanley Cup final. Jason Robertson, over 100 points this past season. And Joe Pavelski. This guy ages like a fine wine, 39 years old, still finding a way to produce at an elite level. So there's another grizzled veteran who has never won a Stanley Cup. On defense, you have Miro Heiskanen, one of the best two-way defensemen in the NHL. You have Jake Ottinger in goal, and I know that he got kind of lit up in the playoffs there, but when he's on his game, we've seen it. Like the previous postseason against Calgary, he can be one of the elite showstoppers out there in net. So they have a lot to look forward to. They added Matt Duchene, so they're a little bit deeper. They have somebody like Wyatt Johnston, a youngster who put up 20 goals. Can he take another step forward? And while they have a lot going for them, I don't think they get talked up quite enough. I think maybe this year they could put it all together finally and win their first Stanley Cup since 1999. Anyway, guys, who are you going to be cheering for in the upcoming season? Let me know whether that's your new favorite team or a second or third team. Again, comment down below with other ideas you have for future videos. And stick around. We have a great season to look forward to. It's been such a long off season, but I'll be coming at you with more uploads and more live streams. So stick around, guys. It's been a pleasure having you here for this video, and I'll see you around for more coverage of the NHL.